Hi, so I'm going to do a series of videos tracking my progress, or maybe not so much progress, through the medical system as I'm troubleshooting my own chronic weird health thing. And I'm not doing this because I need to talk about myself. It's not something that's fun to talk about, but I'm hoping that by sharing this, it might help some other people, because there's quite a few people who have chronic weird things going on, and Western medicine isn't really catching what it is, or they can't figure out what it is. So how do you deal with that? And I'll try to give my background really quickly because it's a long story and I won't get into all the details in this video. But real briefly, back in 2017, I'd had a really bad year. I wasn't sleeping very well. I had a lot of stress in my life I don't need to get into. And one night I was working and all of a sudden my hands started doing this, and I kind of was freaking out because I felt really jittery. And I thought, well, maybe I need to eat something, because I had in the back of my mind that way back in my 20s, I was told I had hypoglycemia, which I never really paid much attention to, except on odd occasions when I was feeling a bit hangry. So I went and I had some cheese and crackers, and that stopped that, at least from what I remember. And then it was like I had full-blown food poisoning symptoms. I'm not sure if it was actually food poisoning. I suspect that it might have had to do with an infection that I had in my gums that I knew I needed to go get treated. But that day, or actually that evening, I just started studying Ayurveda, and I thought, oh, I should do some oil pulling on that. And stupidly, just didn't do it for 2 minutes. I forgot, and I was switching around there for like 10 or even 20 minutes. And I think that bacteria got into my system. That's what I think happened, but I don't know for sure. The doctors thought it was a stomach virus. So, because by the time I went to the doctors, I didn't have a fever. And if you don't have a fever, they don't think it's bacterial. Well, that might not necessarily be true, but at any rate, that night I got so sick, I thought I might die. I think I might have had sepsis, honestly. And my nerves were damaged. I could feel my nerves getting damaged. I was getting tachycardia. I was delirious. At the point I was thinking, ooh, I should go to the hospital. I just was like too out of it, and I just didn't want to bother. I was like curled up on my bed, praying like crazy. So long story short, I survived that night, which was good, but then I was still sick, and I was kind of going in and out of the ER because I was having tachycardia, and I was shaky, and my legs were shaky, and I felt wobbly, and I was having other weird symptoms. I would get woozy, and so they'd run all these tests on me, and they did. I did an MRI, CAT scan, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't really find anything. The one thing they did find, which in retrospect might have been something they should have paid more attention to, was that I had low phosphorus. And low phosphorus can be a sign of gram-negative bacteria or sepsis. Well, not a sign of, but that it can happen if you have that. So they were like, oh, this is amazing. We really have people that have low phosphorus. I had one of these nurses say, I've just never seen this the whole time I've been a nurse. They actually put me on a drip to bring my phosphorus levels back up. And so that was one of the only things they found. And then I had to go to a neurologist. I had to go to a kidney specialist to find out why I had low phosphorus. Did I have a kidney problem? My kidneys were fine. I had a CAT scan of my kidney area. That was fine. I just had all sorts of testing done. So I went to a neurologist. I did test positive for POTS and small fiber neuropathy. So POTS is an autonomic nervous system dysfunction, and that was the explanation for why I was getting dizzy a lot. So fast forward a couple of years, because now it's 2021, I never got completely better. And I got a lot better. I'm certainly a lot better now. Like even from last year, I'm a million times better. Last year, in February of 2020, I had gone to the ER because I was feeling so dizzy. I could barely walk straight. I was feeling like I was going to pass out. And then they ran some more tests. They did another CAT scan. I wasn't having a stroke. The only thing that was even slightly abnormal was that my neutrophils were a little high, but because I didn't have a fever, they didn't put me on any antibiotics or anything. I later had a doctor from Kaiser, because I'm a member of Kaiser, provide a prescription for a very mild antibiotic, actually amoxicillin, but that actually helped. I did feel better. But I was having weird, I think they were like seizures as I was falling asleep, because my brain would light up. I think I might have had some inflammation in my, I don't know if you want to say, it wasn't meningitis, but inflammation in my central nervous system, because I was having all sorts of those symptoms of possible encephalitis that nobody was taking seriously. I had gone to a couple of neurologists and said, I think I'm having seizures as I fall asleep. And they go, oh, that's no big deal. I did finally have a neurologist this year who did some EEGs on me finally, because those other neurologists wouldn't do that. And one of my EEGs was abnormal and showed some possible seizure activity. And I am prone to seizures. I've had a seizure, a full-blown, my arms, leg were jerking around because of a medicine I took. So I could potentially be prone to seizures. I am prone to seizures, it's not even potential. I am prone to seizures. I had one abnormal EEG, and because of that, he did a 2-day at-home EEG, which unfortunately didn't pick up anything. That doesn't mean that you don't have a problem with seizures. It just means they didn't pick it up when they did that 2-day test. So fortunately, that has calmed down since February of this year. So I don't feel like I'm having, it's just, spazzing out as I fall asleep. But I now have some new symptoms, which are alarming, because as of like January, February, also as I started to go into menopause, I'm getting this really crazy hand pain. Now, for a while, I've had it where I've woken up and my hands have been slightly painful and stiff, but not that bad. Nothing that I was that alarmed about. Years ago, I got tested for rheumatoid arthritis and it was negative. And the doctor was like, oh, don't worry about it. So just starting like in February, end of January, it turned from like mild to I can barely close my hand when I wake up sometimes. And that is a big difference. So I started freaking out because I type a lot. I'm a writer, and I was really worried about my ability to work, and I don't want to become disabled in my hands. So I went to my primary care physician, and we got blood work done to see if I had any autoimmune. That was all negative. My inflammation was like none. I actually had like really good blood work, particularly for my age, because I'm now, at the time I was 50, I'm now 51. And so, and they look at me and they, oh, you look good. So what's the problem? I don't feel good. So yeah, so I didn't have any positive testing for autoimmune. I didn't test positive for rheumatoid arthritis. They did an x-ray of my hands. They were normal. So I didn't have osteoarthritis. Then they did carpal tunnel tests. They did nerve conduction tests. Even though I have nerve issues, I was really relieved that the carpal tunnel tests were normal. So my motor nerves are okay. And then they were like, well, here, try this arthritis cream. And I didn't really want to take it, but I was like, well, let's see if it helps. And then I started getting metallic taste on my tongue, and they said, well, stop taking it. So I got some hemp cream, CBD cream, which is not really hugely effective, but once in a while I put it on, maybe there's a slight effect with it, but usually it's the worst in the morning when I wake up. And so I can't put the hemp cream on like in the middle of the night when it's getting worse. And if I put it on before I go to bed, it doesn't necessarily make any difference. So maybe I need a different brand or something. But to me, that's just papering over what the problem is. Why is this happening? In addition, I have like what I would describe as a feeling of restless leg syndrome all over my body. I don't feel like I have to move my limbs, but I have internal shaking and tingling. And some of that's the small fiber neuropathy, but what is causing it? What is continuing to cause it? Why is it still happening? I can put up with my feet burning a little bit. That's fine. But this is beyond that. It's like I'll wake up and my face is like, feels like it's vibrating, or my stomach's vibrating, or I have twitching in my back, or the twitching will move over to my thigh. And that part of the twitching, I was diagnosed with what's called benign cramp fasciculation syndrome, which is a fancy way of saying, we know you have twitching and some abnormal neurological activity. We don't know why. I actually run a group, benign fasciculation syndrome, holistic approaches on Facebook. As much as I'm not a fan of Facebook, it is still there. I log in rarely, so you'll have to wait a while before I approve you. But there's a lot of people who have that issue. So I have all these weird things going on. It means I don't sleep very well sometimes, and that makes me very cranky. and makes me feel like I'm not fully healed, and that there's still something, obviously something's still wrong. So I have, obviously I do holistic stuff. I have also approached all of this holistically because Western medicine has no answers. So I've done quite a bit of Ayurveda, I've done holistic healing. I've, gone to all sorts of different healers. I've been prayed over many times. I think that actually helps. So I definitely think that taking a holistic approach is good. I'm taking actually quite a few anti-inflammatory supplements, which might be why my inflammation looks so good on my lab. So I think those might be helping. Maybe it would be a lot worse if I wasn't doing what I have been doing, because they were like, wow, your labs look great in terms of inflammation, because my CRP is very low, that sort of thing. And that might be why, because I'm taking things like mangosteen and quercetin and other stuff like that. So that said, I'm still very frustrated, particularly with the hand pain, because the other stuff seemed like it was calming down, and the hand pain suddenly started getting worse, but it's correlating with my going into menopause. So I don't usually I'm not a vegetarian. I'm a Vata in Ayurveda. If you know anything about Ayurveda, in Ayurveda, Vata types can actually be helped by meat. It can be grounding and help build us up, because we tend to be a little bit on the frail side. So, but I'm not one usually to have pastrami sandwich for dinner, but I'm with my parents and they wanted to get, go to the deli, and I hadn't had a pastrami sandwich in a long time. This was just last week. So I had this like big, massive meat-filled pastrami sandwich. There was no lettuce. There was just cheese, and I really shouldn't be eating cheese. I have some sensitivity to dairy. I did do some of that testing, but I have definitely, but by the way, before you put in the comments, have you tried getting off of gluten and dairy? Yes, I have, and it doesn't make a damn bit of difference with any of those symptoms. I'm sorry, I actually got tested. I don't have gluten sensitivity. They tested me for it. I'm not sensitive to that. I am sensitive possibly to dairy and yeast. And so I'm careful about that. But what I've noticed is that the dairy just kind of makes my nose a little bit more stuffy. It doesn't impact my other stuff going on. So, and I went off gluten for a while, it didn't help. So it's not that for me. If anything, and I suspect for some people who think they have a gluten issue, maybe it's actually yeast allergy, because yeast is in bread. So I try to avoid too much bread. So it might also have been that night I did have some cheese and in the sandwich, and some there was some bread, obviously. So there was yeast and cheese, and that probably could have made it worse too. But if I have that on a normal day, it doesn't necessarily cause some great big flare up, because I mean this has been going on for years now. So trust me, I would know. I think it was possibly the pastrami, because I had this big thing of pastrami. Oh, and by the way, I can have some pizza once in a while. My family will get pizza. I can eat pizza and I can wake up and feel fine. Seriously, like I could feel good after having pizza for dinner. So it's not the cheese, it's not the bread, but it's probably the pastrami. So I woke up the next morning and my hands were like, and they felt like almost crunchy as I was I couldn't completely bring them down. They get kind of stuck like that, and I can't bring them all the way down. Then when I start to move them and get the circulation going, it gets better. So what is going on? Well, I was just going about my day. I was doing my daily Qigong practice. Qigong is also very helpful. If you have any sort of illness, please do some Qigong, because that in of itself can help. You can even do Qigong in your bed. There's a whole other video I could do about Qigong for illness. So I was doing my daily Qigong, and then this little voice in my head was like, maybe you have gout. And I'm thinking to myself, gout, that's something that old overweight guys get who, drink lots of alcohol and smoke cigars, and I don't have gout. Isn't that usually in the toe? So this came out of left field. This is one of those weird intuitive things. So I go to the computer and I go and type up gout and gout in women or something, gout menopause. Somehow I figured out I needed to look up gout menopause. And it turns out that women, as they go into menopause, often start getting gout. Well, who knew that? Does anybody actually talk about this? No. When our estrogen levels drop, that impairs our ability to process the uric acid. So women, as they go into menopause and after menopause, are much more likely to get gout, to the point where they might even be the majority of gout sufferers when they get into their 80s. And when women get gout, unlike men, it's not often in the big toe, it's often in the hands or in the upper extremities. So I'm thinking this looks like this could possibly be at least one aspect of what's going on. Of course, then you have to, go into all the Ayurveda reasons, which I talk about briefly. But anyway, also, if you have, if you're a woman with gout, you don't have to be overweight, and you're less likely to have these, I think they're called tophi, the little red bumps, or the big red bumps. They get them less than men do. Women get them less than men do. So I'm thinking, well, maybe that's what's going on. It's certainly coincided with me not having my period, or my period starting to stop. So why not get this tested? And so I had an appointment today with a doctor over at Kaiser to see if it'd be worthwhile to get my uric acid levels tested. Now, by the way, when you get them tested, sometimes they can be normal and you can still have the gout, because all of the crystals have now gone into wherever they're causing the problem. So that's not necessarily definitive, but that's possibly a good place to start. And so this just goes back to my whole point of doing all of this and going on about this. You have to do your own research, and you have to be your own advocate, because my doctor didn't say anything about this, because she was probably thinking the same thing. Well, gout's for old men in their big toe. I even had somebody on a forum, I was discussing some forum. She said, oh, I was diagnosed with pseudo gout. What about gout? And at the time I had the idea that gout would be obvious, like you'd be able to see it. And I was like, oh, I don't think I have gout. I don't have any redness or swelling. So no, it's not gout. That was like months ago. Now I'm like, ooh, I didn't know anything. I kind of completely just answered without any, real knowledge. So you have to go do your own research. And then you have to find some willing doctors who might be able to work with you and do some tests. So that's what I'm doing. I talked to this doctor. I actually just used the talk to a doctor immediately option. Now they have this at Kaiser. It's really, really nice. You can talk to them via video. I do have an appointment with my primary care physician that is on Friday, but my symptoms are really bad right now. So it's like, I'd just rather get my test done, because if I wait till Friday, I got to wait till next week to get my blood work done. And I just rather get my blood work done now if possible. So, and also she could provide a different opinion, because each doctor has another opinion. So she was really nice. I gave her the quick rundown that I just gave you, and she thought that sounded sensible to get tested for the gout. So she's ordered the blood work and also to check my electrolytes and everything. And then she asks me, well, do you have any MS in the family? And I said, actually, yes, I do. I have 2 cousins with MS, and I also have a cousin with rheumatoid arthritis. And so she's okay. And she's typing, and then she's like, okay, well, and she'd asked me, did you ever have an MRI? And I said, yeah, I had one for my brain back in 2017, and it was normal. I had like 4 benign lesions. She says, okay. And then she told me that she scheduled a brain MRI for me next week. And, so that kind of, I don't want to say it hit me out of the blue, because there's been a while where I was wondering, because it runs in the family, could there be some MS going on? But, I've talked to all these different neurologists, and they're kind of lackadaisical about it, a lot of them. Neurologists, most of the neurologists I've worked with have been pretty helpful, but some of them, one guy was completely dismissive, and I never went back to see him. And I've had others who've been super nice and helpful, but just they're not Dr. House. They don't dig in deep. And so they can kind of deal with what's obvious, but they don't necessarily know what to do with somebody like me, even though they're neurologists. So she scheduled an MRI for me. So now I got to go get another MRI. I had an MRI of my brain a couple of years ago, and then more recently, but still maybe a year or 2 ago, I had an MRI of my spine. I do have a benign tumor on my spine, but when I talked to them about that, they said, oh, that's not clinically relevant. I'm not entirely convinced about that, but at least for now, they didn't think that was a big deal. It's called a hemangioma. It's on my T7. So who knows? It's probably going to be normal again, but hopefully, because I really don't want to find out that this is actually MS, which should be super scary. So, and she's getting all this other blood work done. Then the other thing that I've been doing is working on it herbally. And I have worked with some great herbalists and Ayurvedic practitioners. But there was an opportunity through a school of Ayurveda called Kerala Ayurveda that I've done some training with to have a session with their internship. And so I thought, I'll do this. It's free, and I want to get another opinion. And I know they work a lot with formulas, so I want to see how they might approach it. And so I had my session, actually it was about a month ago. And it was actually, I didn't realize they would have me be working directly with Dr. J, and the students were just observing. So I had this great session with Dr. J. He's like one of their lead teachers there. And he talked to me for like 2 hours. He did a really extensive intake. He asked me tons of questions. He was awesome. And then he explained all these things. And so he wanted me to do 2 things. One, try to go to bed earlier, because I've always been like a night owl. And 2, do some alternate nostril breathing to help calm my nervous system down, balance my nervous system. And I do that sort of thing, but kind of sporadically, to be honest. And then they would come back to me with the herbal recommendations. It's just taken them a couple of weeks because the students had to work on it and then get his approval. And so they just provided me those recommendations and told me they're moving their apothecary, so I can't order anything until tomorrow. so tomorrow I'll be ordering a whole bunch of new Ayurvedic herbs, primarily which are going to be working on my digestion, which you might think, what does that have to do with anything? Well, when I first got sick, my digestive system got really messed up. I could barely eat. Then I had acid reflux for a while, which finally calmed down through, actually Ayurveda helped a lot with that. And now according to Ayurveda, I have Vishama Manda Agni. So it's like inconsistent and also not really functioning as well as it could be. So they want to get my digestion functioning. And he said I have a lot of excess vata, which I already knew. so the herbs are going to help calm the vata down and to help improve my digestion, which could also impact the rest of my nervous system and my immune system and all that sort of thing. Oh, one more thing before I forget. The doctor that I spoke with today, she also asked if I had been tested for Lyme. And I said, yes, I've been tested like twice and I didn't have it. She said, well, what about this other tick-borne disease? I don't remember exactly what she said. I think it might have been Barella or something like that. Bartonella, I don't remember. The way she said it didn't sound like what I normally think of when I hear about tick diseases. So she thought there might be some sort of tick-borne disease that could be at play. So she's going to test for that. She was surprised they hadn't tested for this other thing that she's going to order. And there might be some other things she threw in there that I'll find out tomorrow, because I'm going to run over to the lab. Maybe not tomorrow. I'll find out in a couple of days, because I'm going to run over to the lab tomorrow. I'm going to get more blood work done, and then I'll get my results in a couple of days. Now, the great thing about Kaiser is that they send the results to you as well as the doctor. So often I will get them even before I have to get any sort of commentary from the doctor about it. And that can help me if I need to go talk to my integrative doctor or whatnot. So they'll put it into my dashboard and I can see right away what is going on. And then of course I look everything up and then I have to ask them, well, my mean platelet volume is a little high. What does that mean? Oh, it's no big deal. It's still kind of within normal range. It's just, but I overthink every single little thing, but that's not a bad thing, because you should go and look at your labs and go look things up if you're wondering where it should be. And sometimes from an integrative perspective, things that are normal in a, in the kind of mainstream medicine, maybe are suboptimal or subclinical from a functional medicine or integrative perspective. So it's also good to work with an integrative or functional medicine doctor if you can. Unfortunately, you often have to pay for that out of pocket. So I have an integrative doctor who's really good, but I have to pay for him out of pocket. And so I don't go see him as much as maybe I'd want to, because I just can't afford to do that. Plus I'm paying for supplements and other things. So anyway, so that's where I'm at. I'm going to get another brain scan. Yay. Fortunately, I don't mind being in the MRI machine. Some people really get scared. I go in there and I actually think it's kind of cool. I do. So if you're going to get an MRI done, like try to flip your perspective of it, because I go in there and I'm like, wow, these sounds are really amazing. Like, it's almost like a Pink Floyd song to me. I always liked Pink Floyd. So I kind of go in there and I just kind of pretend that it's like a sound healing session, and that the vibrations are kind of helping my body, and then it's not so bad. So anyway, maybe I'll do another video. I will do another video at some point after I get all my test results and my MRI done, and we'll see. So anyway, that's what's going on with me. And this is just full transparency too, for anybody who's working with me or thinking about working with me. Why should I work with you? Well, I have a lot of, I can at least help try to navigate all this stuff, because I now I know through personal experience, like, oh my goodness, it is, and you really have to be persistent, and that can be really tiring, especially if you have to do it on your own, but you just have to want to get better. And when it was really bad, I was like, I mean, it used to be really, really bad, where I was feeling so awful all the time, and I didn't know if I'd come out of it. And I'm a million times better now, other than like these weird things and not feeling great when I'm sleeping. I'm mostly normal. So I'm thinking about going out and kayaking in about an hour, so I can do that. And I couldn't have done that when I first got sick. So you can get better, but it's going to take some time. And you just have to make a decision. So the decision I had to make was, well, I have either two options. I can give up and just be miserable for the rest of my life. I'm not going to kill myself, because I'm too chicken to do that. So I won't. So if I'm not going to kill myself and I have to live, I don't want to live this way. So I have to figure out a solution. And I've been studying holistic health my whole life. I need to figure this out. Do I beat myself up because I haven't completely healed? I do, and I probably shouldn't. Do I feel like, oh, I need to do more, positive energy stuff? Yes. Is there possibly a spiritual component? Yes, I've been told that, but I don't want to get into that weird woo-woo here. So you have to look at it from all different levels and perspectives, but from a purely functional, integrative Western perspective, this is kind of this approach that I'm taking right now, just to see, at least with the hand stuff, is that possibly gout? One more thing, I did look up that is there relation between gout and neuropathy. And sometimes there was only one little study, but there might be a possibility that if it is just gout, that could be aggravating my nerves. So who knows? Maybe there's just I have a genetic tendency for it. I looked it up on my DNA report. Maybe some of this is the post-infectious syndrome, and maybe some of this is just I have some blood chemistry that's messed up, and that's just causing my nerves to go crazy, and it's nothing worse than that, and it can be fixed. If so, that would be great. It's probably not going to be that simple. Probably the tests are going to be normal again. That's what I'm expecting, because that's what they always are. So in the meantime, I'm going to at least try to, kind of go on a gout diet a little bit and see if that helps. So reducing meat consumption. I got some tofu, and I'm going to have more tofus at my age that the phytoestrogens are actually good for you, that sort of thing. And, if I were living alone, maybe I'd even just try a vegetarian diet right now, but during my circumstances, I can't. So you got to work with what you have, but that's what I'm going to do. So I hope this was helpful to somebody. And if you have any questions, just let me know. And I hope that you're doing well, and just hang in there. No matter what's going on, it can get better. Okay. Thanks. Bye.